Welcome to Night Shadows. I'm Stuart Best, where the paranormal is normal, where that which you thought you knew, you didn't, and where the future can be known if you know exactly where to look.
Well, good evening, everyone, and thanks for listening. And we have Larry on board on the top of his mountain. Hi, Larry. How you doing?
Oh, I'm just sitting out on the deck with my big spy glasses, checking things out around the country.
Yeah, things are moving along. Why don't we start with a Bible quote? That's kind of interesting, dealing with Mars by Barry. The reason I think it's interesting because of all the research I've done on Mars, and we have a lot of structures up there. I'm positive we're up there, Alternative 3, et cetera, et cetera. What did he have on that?
Well, it's very interesting, Stuart. And, of course, you have the situation with Tithonia on Mars, and the people that don't know about that, maybe we can talk about that again sometime on a program. But what's so interesting is we've had Barry Rothman on a number of times, and, he's been a real contender with NASA and JPL, against their readings that they were giving people on Mars that they were finding, and
yes.
He challenged them, and they've had to correct a number of their readings, including the atmosphere. And of course, if you have no atmosphere, Stuart, you're certainly not going to have dust devils and sandstorms, and Mars is covered with them, and so it's got an atmosphere. And what's interesting is this new Torah code he just did today, June the 1st, 2018. It's called Helo to Mars. And basically what that means is a Mars helicopter, a small autonomous rotocraft constructed by NASA, JPL, and Caltech, is going to Mars. That's the plans. Now, Barry ran a Torah code, and wow, I'm interested in that report because of two reasons. That research matrix shows there's six here. Let me read them, then I'll go back over them with you. Number
Sure.
1, Mars helicopter. Number 2, to launch. Number 3, to launch again. Number 4, year 5780, which is 2020. Number 5, feasible, and number 6 is Mars. Now, what's very interesting is Barry Rothman challenged NASA and JPL on their readings on an atmosphere, and, of course, he won.
Yes.
And so it's interesting that, after the challenge, that they're actually sending a Mars helicopter or a rotocraft there to go around in the atmosphere to photograph Mars and examine things on Mars, because that tells you right away that you're not going to fly a helicopter on Mars, even a small one, if there's no atmosphere.
Yeah.
And so, but on the other hand, what's interesting, Stuart, and I'd like your opinion on this, everybody, they keep talking, they think Trump's done. They've got him done. They're fixing to remove him. And we're going into another paradigm, timeline, if you will, and
Yep.
things are going to change, and all of this. But what if? Now I'm just saying what if, and we'll go over Laserson's code in a minute about the left and the right. But what if? We've got a Mars launch, so America's still around in 2020 according to the Torah, and not only that, we're actually sending Mars missions in 2020, which is 5780 according to the Hebrew calendar. So what do you think, Stuart? Does Trump maybe hang in there longer than they expect and go another few years, and we accomplish more than we can imagine?
Well, it's a very real possibility, because we're not really told. In Psalm 90, there's a time code. But the end of Psalm 90 uses a very unusual phrase. It just says soon. And so we don't know what the length of soon is when it says we fly away. So easily Trump could be the delay that was needed because the far left deep state communist group was moving way too fast. They had a shoe-in when it came to Hillary. They were absolutely positive Hillary was going to win. And so that set the whole machinery back. And as you know, Obama's had absolute hatred for Israel and was really in the process of betrayal. In fact, I remember reading 3 newspaper articles some time ago in Israel where they claimed that America was betraying them. So along comes Trump, re-solidifies in order to get the Jerusalem as the capital of Israel, get the embassy over there, and the next move has to be the third temple. And once that is there, then I think we know exactly where we are, along with Isaiah chapter 17. Because right after Isaiah 17 is chapter 18, and that is, I believe, the removal of the church at that point in time. It's just coded, but I think that's what it says. So, but as far as Mars, they have had an atmosphere. The sky is not the color they claim it is. It is blue. It's a pale blue, but nevertheless, it's a blue sky. They have messed with the colors so that the people think that Mars is basically a dead planet, when in fact it is not. And Barry's done a lot of work on the weather up there. So, and we know that we're there. I mean, I think Tithonia City and the face on Mars, definitely, and there's a lot of other things now that people have found, prove that not only was there very ancient civilization there, but I think we're up there as well. In fact, I know we're up there as well. I don't know if you're familiar with Alternative 3. We made a documentary on Alternative 3, tried to get it up and put it up on YouTube, and it was censored immediately. They would not let us put it up. They said it would not be seen in any country. And as you know, they already took out Daniel and the 4 beast powers, and nobody in Canada or the United States can see it. So we're in the process of moving things out of YouTube altogether, and I don't know how successful we'll be because there is so much censorship going on now. But no, there's life on Mars. It has been right along, and NASA, never a straight answer, is about the truth of it. And when I put out not Iron Mountain, but Project Red Star, which talked about Tithonia, some of people who got that went to NASA with it, and they were more or less told, mind your own business, and where did you get that? Because you shouldn't know about that. They've been lying about this right along. The government of the United States has become a pathological liar, and they do it routinely. So, well, you even in the police departments, what do? When they get on the witness stand, a lot of them lie through their teeth, even under oath. They don't care. Government claims the right to be able to lie to you, but you have no right to lie to them. Otherwise, you get put in a slammer. Very, very interesting system they've set up, but unfortunately, the system is about to collapse. It's coming down, and all the people in the deep state, and unfortunately, those not in the deep state, are going to go down with it. And that's part of biblical prophecy, and it will and must be fulfilled. But we're in very, very interesting times right now. Tremendously interesting times. So, yeah, I believe that Barry's code confirms everything that I found and you found. You've been there. In I don't know if you can call it vision or how you call that, but remember when I was working on Red Star. You were calling me and telling me about the journeys, and they were confirming everything that I was looking at. That's the way it goes.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And by the way, in my opinion, and of course I'm not asking anybody to believe me, but I was there in my spirit body. And, of course, Red Elk, he claims that is seeing. When you go look at something in the spirit, that he says it's seeing. And but what's very interesting is the fact that, I didn't know you was working on Tithonia, and that's why I mentioned it, is the fact that you said not only were there ancient buildings at Tithonia, but there were newer buildings at Tithonia and what appeared to you to look like some Tesla technology station there, along with saucer craft.
Yes, there were 2 UFOs sitting right there in the ramp. They're very easy to spot. When we did the DVD documentary, I haven't put it up yet on YouTube because I think it'll be censored anyway. I'll try and work on getting it up in my. I got a new, by the way. I'm putting up a new WordPress site, and it's simply called nightshadowsradio.com, and we're going to be putting all kinds of stuff up there because that's what Night Shadows really is. It's the paranormal, world news, oddities, space travel, cosmic, everything that we can, that most people don't talk about, don't want to hear, and we're trying to enlighten people, Lift up your head because your redemption drawing nigh. Things are happening all over the world now. So
yeah, well, that's great information, Stuart. Glad to hear that you're going to do that. And by the way, maybe there's time now. Maybe we're finding a little bit. There is some time here. We know censorship has been ongoing, and they're trying their best, but maybe it's not going to work like they think for a little while. I would tell people, if we still have a window of time, do everything you can to reach people and get the word out during that time frame. And the reason I say that, Stuart, if the Torah code is indicating that NASA is still operating at a normal level where they're actually sending Mars missions out in 2020, then my question to you would be, and I'll also after that read this Glazerson Torah code again.
Mm-hmm.
I would ask you, is it by chance possible that we go into a time of what you call a false peace or possibly a deceptive peace for a couple of years or maybe a little longer?
Yep.
With Russia, China, North Korea, Iran, all of this, instead of going to total war right away, and so we have a little bit more time to actually work? What do you think?
Well, yeah, I think that's very easily possible. Peace when there is no peace. It's a fake peace. And as we've talked about before, it is possible we're going to see the North and South Korean situation basically resolved. It's amazing to me that Putin has told Iran, which is his ally, get your troops out of Syria. And that occurred, I think, after Bibi went and visited Putin there in Moscow. And who knows, maybe Bibi said, if this keeps up, we'll just use the Samson option and the war is on. Because we don't, if we're going to go down, we're going to take the world with us. And, with no temple, so the only question is, do we have a war and that triggers the building of a temple and a peace agreement, or do we go into a metamorphosis of a peace? We're morphing into a fake peace. And it just seems that things are getting very, very quiet when it comes to the rhetoric of war. Even Putin, get your troops to Iran, get your troops out of there, and do it now. So something has occurred, and this may be Trump. Who knows?
Yeah, that's very interesting, Stuart. And And really, what's so interesting too, you're talking about Putin. Actually, there was a headline today came out in Times of Israel reporting that Lieberman, had met in Moscow with the Russian military, and the Russians are now telling Lieberman that they have given a total open door for Israel to attack anywhere in Syria, any Iranian forces inside Syria. And so this is strange. Putin is doing this to his ally. He's allowing Israel to attack his ally and their armies inside Syria, which is unprecedented. And by the way, North Korea is doing some very strange summit stuff. There's another deal. The Cho, that's Kim's number 3 man
yes.
in Korea, just came to the White House, brought a letter, a sealed letter, gave it to Trump. Nobody knows what's in the letter. Trump came out of the White House after he left, which it was a long, like 80 minutes or longer, dialogue between Trump and him and I suppose Pompeo and possibly others inside the White House. And Trump addressed the news media and said everything's wonderful, said the June 12th summit is ready and Kim's ready, and we'll just have to see where this goes. And then there's a very strange report coming from Sartre Fall, which, a number of times Sartre Fall has written stuff that's kind of off the wall, but if you wait a couple of weeks or longer, there was something to that. And so I don't know if it's true or not, but I find it interesting that Sartre Fall posted today, and you saw the report, of something, a possible change in the summit location. And I'm not going to go into that because I don't know if it's really true, so I'm just not going there. But I will say this, Stuart. When Trump came out to address the nation, basically, they asked him if he got the letter from this, and he said, "Oh, yes, I did. It's a wonderful letter." And they said, "What does it say?" And he said, "Well, I don't know. I hadn't opened it." So, Stuart, in your opinion, what letter would be given from directly, hand-carried from North Korea to the White House that's so unimportant, and what it says, you haven't opened it to even look in it to read it before you do an address. Stuart, do you reckon this is scripted or a dialogue that is already known to certain ones? And what do you think?
Yeah, I think Psalm 2 says it all. It's scripted. We're watching the Armageddon script, basically, I think, coming to pass. And I can read part of this from Sartre Fall. And as Larry said, it's not been vetted. You never know whether any of it's true. But she claims that the personal letter written by President Putin delivered to North Korea during the past few hours contained unconditional security guarantees for safe and protected travel to Vladivostok for the North Korean officials to meet with President Donald Trump in Russia. Now, I have not heard one word on mainstream TV about it, but we do know, for example, that Kim, I don't think, travels by air at all. He always goes, does he not, by train, I think.
Oh, that's true, Stuart. He doesn't like flying. His daddy refused to fly because he said they can shoot you down so easily, and he doesn't fly. But what's odd, there is not only a train going to Beijing from North Korea, there's also a train line going to Russia, to Vladivostok, that would be possible. That trip would certainly be possible, and if Russia provided aerial and surrounding security for that train, I don't know. The next number of days are going to be very interesting to see where this goes.
Yeah, I know he has a heavily armored train that he travels in. He doesn't travel very often because obviously he's afraid of a coup attempt when he's gone from the capital there in North Korea. But this is kind of interesting that they might change the meeting to Russia. How's he going to get to, where was the other? Singapore, I think, was the meeting place. But he has to fly to get to Singapore. So I'm not saying that. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to mention that's very true. That would be unconventional for travel for him, and possibly a nightmare for security of Kim. Because remember, in the Singapore area, wasn't that where Kim actually had his half brother assassinated?
Yes. Yeah, in that area. I mean, you know, he's ruthless. Absolutely ruthless. Personally, I still think the whole thing is a trap, and everybody may know it, but maybe this is how they're going to trigger the upcoming wars whenever they arrive, because we don't know the time schedule actually. So
yeah, and Stuart, I was just gonna. I'd like your opinion on this. What do you think the Democrats, the Republicans, the left, and the socialists would do if they suddenly heard that this summit might be in Russia? They would go insane.
Yeah. Yep. Russia, collusion. Well, the only collusion has been on the Democratic side, the communist side, and Putin is a ruthless player as well. Kim is as well, and China, Xi as well. They're all ruthless, and this is kind of like you were talking about the Game of Thrones. This is a big Game of Thrones, and they're jockeying for power. And, you know, Russia and China have both said, well, why should the West run the new world order? Why can't we run it? And I've often thought that China actually is going to be the basic model for the new world order. There's just too many things going into that it's kind of a test bed. When you have a dictatorship, you can do whatever you want. And over here, you can't. They have to be very, very careful how they do things. So, but Trump bashing is still in full force. And, you know, I was thinking about this Roseanne Barr remark that she made, and I was wondering, with all the brouhaha over that, would that be a diversionary tactic of the far left so that we don't talk about the Muslim Brotherhood? Because she mentioned that. And
Stuart?
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I thought you were going to ask me a question there. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to butt in. But I was going to say, you know, that's one thing you can't, you know, under Obama's 8 years, and really even the Bushes, you can't say Muslim Brotherhood or Muslims or Islam, or you can't go, they couldn't even say ISIS. You had to say ISIL, and it's just really born on stupid. But, you know, what's interesting is the fact that in the background, Stuart, you know, this, like you said, there was a lot of brouhaha going on here, and it throws more fear. It seems to throw fear into the social media realm. Don't talk about those subjects. You know, don't talk about that. And there is some rumors in the background that I'm picking up on that possibly there's going to be some negotiations about the Roseanne show again. It's not all gone. I'm beginning to wonder, Stuart, is this like a hologram maybe in front of people's eyes?
It very well could be. And, of course, she knows, you know, her show is worth millions of dollars. And, you know, it might have been an impromptu, well, we got to fire her and we got to get rid of the show. And now they're having second thoughts, possibly, too, because of the popularity of the show. I mean, it's a very popular show. In fact, I guess it was the most popular. When money is involved, money always talks one way or another. So it'll be very, very interesting. But these comments she made about the Muslim Brotherhood, the infiltration of the White House under Obama, may have been that they don't want the deep state, and the press does not want the American people to understand what's going on in America, because we face a jihad. They are infiltrating everywhere. They're coming in by the boatloads, and we have people who have testified that and by the way, Larry, these guys are mostly young men of military age, which of course reminds me of Jeremiah. And he's going to fill the United States with alien forces that are going to rise up when the signal is given and cause great mischief in the land all over. I mean, we even have them here in Menominee. And they're everywhere. And they're going into these small towns, and the United Nations is behind almost all of it. So, I don't know. But it was odd to me that they ignored those comments that she made and zeroed in on the other and kind of made, a tremendous deal out of it. But I guess that's the way it is. What do you think on that one? I'm just very, very curious about the communist media and the silencing of free speech, censorship of free speech.
Yeah, you're right, Stuart. And as you was talking about that made me think of Dan Gordon's two books. He wrote one about,
yes,
the end time trouble in the Middle East, and the second book was about America and was about filtration of America just by what means you just described. And what actually also in his book, they had trouble crossing from Mexico into Texas or Arizona, trying to come in to infiltrate to cause attacks. But the easiest routes were through the drug tunnels and the ocean into California. They inserted into California and began their sudden attacks there, terror attacks. And guess what? I just found out that Dan Gordon apparently has found out it's time to leave California because of what's going on, and he's moved. He's left California, moved to Arizona.
Well, he probably knows. He's the IDF commander, right?
Yeah.
I mean, he probably has many contacts in Israel, and they may know what's going on. If this is a script, the leaders of the world in Psalm 2 know what the script is, or some of them do. This is very, very fascinating. And for him to get up and move quickly like that would indicate that maybe California is either going to come under an attack. Remember Red Elk, and his prophecies said that California would be invaded from the Pacific. That was one of the invasion areas. But it also could be earth changes that they're aware of, because the earth changes are really coming. What's going on in Hawaii? Speaking about that, we should get on Hawaii, because it seems to me, I've got several articles here I've been reading, that some of them even are claiming that that island is going to go under the sea.
Yeah, they're having the most recent large earthquake there at the volcano in the Big Island of Hawaii was a 5.3. Now that's getting on up there, and now I'm finding out this evening, and of course this is June the 1st, that they are formulating a plan now to have a mandatory evacuation of the Big Island of Hawaii because of the increased volcanic activity on that island. And this will be mandatory, and those that don't leave will be arrested and removed. So they're evacuating that entire island now, Stuart. Now, USGS is not saying much, but some of the reports are coming out of there, though. A forced evacuation is beginning.
Wow. Well, it's amazing to me that people are, how do I say, not moving. Why would they not be moving? When you've got I guess curiosity maybe stops them from moving away. I don't know. It's just kind of strange to me that they are staying behind, and even I've had some reports where they said that people were actually coming to visit, but then others said that
sure.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to mention, you and I had talked earlier, you mentioned Harry Truman and the Mount St. Helens location. Tell us about that. That's really interesting because people do think that way.
Well, yeah, Harry Truman ran a resort, and the only reason I know about it is, and know Harry Truman, is when I was flying for the Northern Pacific Railway. And Harry ran a resort there was a lake there, and I can't remember what the name of the lake was, but he lived there on the lake. And he said he was never going to leave. And even at that point in time, there were some rumbles in Mount St. Helens. And I've flown over there many, many times, and, up and down the West Coast. And when it went, it took Harry with him. Now, Red Elk claims it's going to blow again, but it's going to blow towards the Pacific. He claims that all of those along that whole West Coast are one by one just going to be lighting off, which would be in a tune with No Eyes, who says that all these volcanoes are going to come alive, and in fact, areas that are not even known for volcanoes are going to become alive. And that is in accord, actually, with the Bible, I believe, and Bible prophecy for the last days. It's predominantly, it appears, and if you go into the book of Enoch, it says the same thing, basically, that the demise of humanity is going to be volcanic. And, of course, a pole shift, a literal pole shift, and a crustal shift, which a lot of people can't. I don't know how you get your mind around the earth flipping over, but the Bible is very clear in Isaiah chapter 24 that the whole earth just turns upside down and wobbles back and forth. And we're already beginning to see a wobble. And people are reporting all the time the sun seems to be rising in a place it shouldn't be, and then it's back to normal again. And then the moon is rising in an area it's never risen before, and then it's back to normal again. Well, that's a wobble. And that's what the Bible says in Isaiah chapter 24, that the earth begins to wobble. The Inuit Indians up north have known about it for a number of years. They navigate by the stars, so they've had to change all their navigational wisdom because things have changed. Have you gotten any reports about that? I mean, I have received a number of them.
Oh, yeah. There's quite a few people are talking about electromagnetic changes, and of course the sun's acting really strange. And, a lot of reports of people that see the sun or the moon in the wrong places, and then it changes back, like you said, becomes kind of normal again, then it'll be off again. And, we've all witnessed this over the last few years. This has been happening.
Yeah. From the book of the Kolbrin, let me read a little bit of this. Destruction and recreation, which is the earth has gone through this. When Solon went to Egypt and talked to the Egyptian priests, they said, you're kind of foolish there, Solon. Don't you know that the earth has undergone many, many destructions, wiping out the entire civilization that was there? And it's going to happen again, and it happens by a number of ways. Now, in this one it says, it is known, and the story comes down from ancient of times, that there was not one creation, but two, a creation and a recreation. It is a fact known to the wise that the earth was utterly destroyed once and reborn on a second wheel of creation. Now, when you go into Genesis, what does it say? God told humanity, Adam and Eve and the rest, go forth and replenish the earth. Well, you don't replenish something unless it was made empty before. So obviously, when you're reading Genesis, and you read it carefully, it's talking about there was, I believe, it was Satan domain and kingdom, Lucifer, whatever you want to call him. And remember in Ezekiel where it talks about how God destroyed Lucifer's interplanetary, if not intergalactic system, because he was a trafficker. It's very, very interesting that is a lot of, I think, what we see on Mars and some of these structures here on Earth that we cannot pinpoint as to where they came from or who built them, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I believe we're looking at a lot of this stuff is very, very ancient before Adam and Eve. What's your take on that?
Oh, I think you're exactly right. And, you know, there is a report that a lot of the debris in our solar system is from another planet out past Mars that was possibly named Tiamat. And how that was one of, I guess you could say, Lucifer's main planets that, you know, he was running things from, and it got totally wiped out, and some destruction also hit Mars. So, yeah, you know, this is what's going on, I believe.
Yeah, I think Mars was actually a satellite of Lucifer's home planet, and when it exploded, and you find that, I think, in Ezekiel as well, the Lord destroyed that planet, and Mars just happened to be close enough to take a big hit. If you really examine Mars, you find that it has tremendous craters only on one side, and it's got a lot of volcanic and rifts on the other. So, in fact, Tithonia City lives within a Tithonian chasma floor. So anyway, this is kind of interesting because it says, at the time of the great destruction of earth, God caused a dragon from out of heaven to come and compass her about. The dragon was frightful to behold. It lashed its tail. It breathed out fire and hot coals, and a great catastrophe was inflicted upon mankind. The body of the dragon was cold, bright light, and beneath on the belly a ruddy hued glow, while behind it traveled a flowing tail of smoke. It spewed out cinders and hot stones, and its breath was foul and stenchful, poisoning the nostrils of men. Its passage caused great thunderings and lightnings to rend the thick, darkened sky, all heaven and earth being made hot. The seas were loosened from their cradles and rose up, pouring across the land. There was an awful shrilling, trumpeting, which outpowered even the howling of the unleashed winds. Can you imagine that? And what does the book of Revelation tell us in chapter 12? A great red dragon. It's the return of the destroyer. And people are mocking it because we've been told many times, oh, it's going to happen in 2012, it's going to happen in 2014, it's going to happen in 2016. Well, the point and fact is, it is going to happen, and God is timing it precisely to cause the final phase of our, I guess we could call humanity's phase, is coming to an end. We're very rapidly approaching Omega point. What do you think? I mean, this is exactly what I think the book of Revelation is talking about.
Yeah, and, you know, about 2012, we was really looking for something big that never happened. And, of course, a lot of people just blew off the Mayan calendar as it was just a joke. But later on, I found out that a rabbi, had run a Torah code about the 2012 event, and I can't remember if it was, might have been Herlick, you know, one of those over in Israel, had ran it, and he found the word delay. He found 2012 in it, but he found delay. So the event was delayed, I guess, past where we're at right now. So, you know, I remember Stan Dale had talked to us one time, and he says, well, this, whatever it is they're tracking seems to speed up and slow down. You know, it's not just moving forward under its own power. It's being driven or manipulated. So maybe that's why we can't just look up at the sky every time we'd like to and take a picture.
Well, it's kind of interesting. It says here that the seas were loose from their cradles and rose up, pouring across the land, would indicate that a literal shift of the poles was taking place. When I was on the Art Bell show, we talked about the high winds that would occur, because when the Earth crust begins to move, and evidently it moves very, very rapidly. A pole shift, when it finally topples, is very quickly. But the atmosphere above it does not move with the surface. And so you have these terrific winds that develop. And I can't imagine the kind of hurricane force winds. I mean, you'd have winds 800, 1,200 miles an hour, all but destroy everything on the outer perimeter of the shift point. So, but I didn't mention when I was on his show what would happen to the oceans. The oceans are not solid like the crust is. So obviously they're going to rise up out of the seas and cover the lands. Kind of like, what was that movie, 2012? I think, where they had yeah, I was just going to mention it. He didn't miss out on it, though, because, you know, he and Whitley Strieber wrote the book that they made the movie Day After Tomorrow from, and you remember the massive wave that came out of the Atlantic that covered New York and all with that water? Yes. Yeah, and that's minor. I mean, we are talking hundreds and hundreds, if not miles high, something that we can't even begin to imagine. But when a pole shift occurs, it according to what I can find out in the research I've done, and I've got a video documentary on it. I can't remember what I think it's Mega Earth Changes and Is There a Polar Shift Coming? And yes, there is. And we're seeing all the signs of it already. And the Hawaiian situation is only the beginning. And it's kind of interesting when you mention Dan Gordon leaving California. Now, it might be because he knows something we don't when it comes to earth changes, or it might be warfare or something of that nature. But I've been warning people to get out of California for years, and I'm not the only one. Major Ed Dames, Dr. Doom, warned everybody on Coast to Coast when he was on with Art Bell a number of times, said, get away from the coastal regions. But they're not going to do it. So we have Hawaii that could break off and go into the sea, creating a tsunami hundreds of feet tall that would hit the United States all up and down, from Alaska all the way down. And then on the East Coast, we have the Canary Island situation. And I understand there's an uptick in earthquakes there. Folks, we're going to see stuff you wouldn't believe when it comes to earth changes. I can't tell you if this is man-made. A lot of it is. A lot of the weather we're having is weather warfare. So it's very, very hard to tell what is actually natural and what is weather warfare. And you remember Bill Cohen, Larry, when he was Secretary of Defense, he testified. He testified to a congressional committee that he didn't name who they were, but let's say the top of deep state had the means and the technology to create volcanoes, earthquakes, hurricanes, anything basically they wanted to do. And I do remember somebody had a vision, and he was taken underground. You may remember this. And he was taken underground somewhere in the United States where they were causing these things to happen. he was shown that it was man-made for the most part. Maybe an attempt to imitate the return of the Messiah so they can bring in their fake Messiah. I don't know. What do you think? They have the technology.
I don't remember who that was, but I do. It kind of reminds me. You remember James Casbolt over in the UK that was involved in all this deep state stuff. You know, he also claimed that they were planning an event like that, and they were also genetically modifying humans to be able to endure during those times. And of course, James Catbolt, I've heard, is dead now. And matter of fact, didn't William Cohen, didn't he drown strangely?
No, that was the guy of the CIA. He was running the CIA. What was his name? Yeah, he was murdered. He knew too much. Casbolt knew too much. I have his book, James Casbolt, his book. And, yeah, he was talking about super soldiers. They have genetically modified these things. They got eyes like cats. They got hearing like dogs. They're much bigger. They're 10 to 12 feet tall. And I guess what you could call, remember the movie Universal Soldier?
Oh, yeah.
Well, I guess what Casbolt claims, this is real. I've often said that what you see in the movies has already been done. It's just that we don't know anything about it. And when they decide, in fact, I have heard reports from some soldiers that claimed they were up against what appeared to be not necessarily totally human hybrids. Any more news, speaking about hybrids, any more news on that wolf man that they shot?
No, they're still reporting that the Game and Wildlife that have the body are having DNA tests run because they've never seen anything like it, and they don't know what it is at all. And I've had a number of people on different groups talking and saying that they believe this is a hybrid creature that they've let out it's a test run, and that possibly they'll let out more if this, it had succeeded. There's a lot of strange things going on, Stuart.
I know. And I can remember I was doing a seminar, and we had an engineer who was an Israeli, came, and he said that they already had, and this was years and years and years ago, he said they already had cloaking. In fact, he claimed that cloaking was used on the raid of Entebbe. I don't know exactly how it works or what part of the airplane they cloaked, but people did say that they could hear the airplane, but they couldn't see it. So it's very, very interesting. And Israel has a lot of high technology they're not telling anybody. So anyways, all extremely interesting. Where do we go? Let's see. Hawaii, will it vanish? There's an article out about that. Could Hawaii vanish as a big island and just sink beneath the sea? So they're really talking about this, the possibility, and that agrees with Stan Dale. So what else have you got? We got the Glazeson thing, and that kind of ties into the last days, too. Do you have that in front of you?
Oh, yeah. This is what is interesting. It's I got it through Breaking Israel News. Rabbi Glazeson he did it in Hebrew, but what it says basically is it gives people Ecclesiastes 10 and 2, and the Israel Bible and my King James Amplified agrees. It says a wise man's mind tends towards the right hand, a fool's towards the left. And I immediately thought, Stuart, of the left and the right that's going on in America right now. And Rabbi Glazeson, he entitled the code, he said, in the Torah codes, the dark angel of the left wing is battling Messiah. Now, when they say Messiah, sometimes it actually means a messenger sent during the time of the Messiah. It doesn't necessarily mean Jesus Christ. It can be someone else. And basically, and I'd like your comment, it also, he says that it's a conflict between the left wing and the right wing that has mystical roots and hidden clues, and he claims that it shows a defeat of the left in 57-78, which is 2018. That's the time frame we're in. Now, Stuart, 57-78 ends in September. So
yes.
I'm looking, if there's going to be a battle where the left is defeated, possibly by Trump, who knows? It's got to occur like June, July, and August, and we're in that time frame before the September change of 57-78 going into 79.
Yeah, well, you know, they're uncovering more and more and more stuff. And I guess my take would be, how long does deep state wait? You know, it seems to me that they have to do something. And even if it's all scripted, so for the masses of the people, it's not going to look scripted at all. So they may do something like a big false flag. It'd have to be a big one. Like maybe New York being flooded or something like that. Remember, wasn't it Augusto that had that vision about a turmoil in the ocean, and it created a tsunami that hit the East Coast in Florida?
Yeah, that's exactly right, Stuart. He thought it might have been a nuke set off on the ocean floor that caused it, but he said because of the way it was swirling under the ocean.
Wow. Well, I think Earth changes are maybe more to the point of keeping your eyes open, folks, because flash floods are going to occur. I remember the bot saying that it would be like you'd almost drown if you went outside during one of these flash floods. They'd be like a waterfall. And he talked about oceanic atmospheric rivers, basically, filled with water. And they're in the atmosphere, and wherever they hit, that's when they drop down. And that's cliff high, and they're just trying to interpret what they read, and the language changes. But now the Weather Bureau is using that very phrase, atmospheric rivers. They never used that phrase. It started maybe a year ago, 2 years ago at the most, when they began to introduce atmospheric rivers. And that's what the bots were picking up on. And the really serious part about the bots, and I'm not asking people to believe it because their timing never seemed to work out very well, but the events that they talk about eventually do come around. And he talks about not only sun disease, which was going to cause very anomalous effects upon people, almost making people who are hit by these things, he called them magnetic tornadoes, electromagnetic tornadoes, and leave you stupefied. And I know people around when we get these solar storms, they don't feel right. They feel bad, weak, brain fog, all kinds of things are going on. Well, it's going to get worse. But he talked about ocean disease. But more importantly, he talked about huge migrations from the coastal regions. So something has to occur on the coastal regions. Whatever it is, tsunamis, high tides, something occurs that people begin migrating in mass numbers. And he said the migrations are going to be hideous when they occur. So people should have probably listened to Dr. Doom when he said, get away from the coastal regions. Well, people don't want to move. Look at the people in Hawaii. They're they enjoy the sea. They enjoy where they're living. And to them, why would I move? I'll take my chances. And I think that's what's happening in Hawaii. They're going to take their chances, not realizing that whole island could blow its top from one end to the other and vanish. But kind of like Harry Truman out there in Mount St. Helens area. I'm not moving. If she wants to take me, he said, she'll take me. Well, that's exactly what happened. Poor Harry was taken in that explosion. And I can't remember the late it was on. Go ahead.
Yeah, isn't it interesting also, you mentioned those atmospheric rivers. We never hardly heard any language like that, Stuart, or saw what we're seeing now in the atmosphere until the Gulf Stream stopped running. Remember? The Gulf Stream stopped, and then suddenly now, a year or two later, we're seeing atmospheric rivers. So it is Earth changes that are operating.
Well, yeah, you've got your jet streams are changing all over the place. The ocean currents have stopped, and they start up again, then they go into eddies. That's why England is having such terrific bad weather in Europe, because all the warm water kept those climates relatively mild. Well, that's not happening anymore. In fact, I think it was, again, going back to the bots, never know whether you can trust them or not, but they said England, or at least the very wealthy, would leave England, and they'd be coming here. It'd be a mass exodus out of England because of the climate change. And you know that Europe is, the flooding and the severe winters and all of that. We are headed into stealth famine because of it. I don't think there's any question about it. What else you got before we close down?
Well, I'm just going to mention, Stuart, this situation with Tommy Robinson in the UK. I'm getting a number of reports from the UK how that the government has just totally taken over there, and how Muslims, you cannot talk about a Muslim, and it's a Muslim invasion of even the UK right now that's occurring. Matter of fact, London Stan, the mayor is a Muslim who hates guns, and they don't have any guns, but they've got Muslims stabbing people all over the city. I mean, it's unbelievable, the violence. And this Tommy Robinson was a journalist that was reporting on it. He was literally arrested and taken before a judge and sentenced to prison in hours, and put in a prison that they are saying and warning is that's exactly where he'll be killed, in that prison. And people are alarmed in the UK with what they're seeing their government do now.
Well, of course, what we've got is a communist coup, socialistic coup, whatever you want to call it, Fabian socialism, it doesn't matter. But it's a dictatorial type of socialism. No freedoms, no rights, whatever. And if it's a UN world domination, people need to remember that the UN, when they take over, it's a martial law situation. It's a military situation. We're headed that way, unless the people rise up, which I doubt they will. But yeah, you're right. You can't. You can say anything you want about a Christian, but you dare not say anything about a Muslim or Islamic faith or anything. In fact, in the strong cities here in America, I think they've changed it, where they said it was against the law. You'd be arrested if you spoke out against a Muslim. So, but it's okay on a Christian. Any last comments before we close?
Yeah, Glazerson's deal said the left are fools. And by the way, Tucker Carlson on Fox just showed an image of Ship of Fools at the storm, and all the left is riding Hillary and all of them, Obama, they're riding a ship of fools. Really interesting timing.
Yeah, it is. Here's a final headline for all of you. If you think peace is ultimately coming, U.S. Admiral warns China is biggest threat to the United States as Xi dreams of domination. So, anyway, thanks for listening. Thanks a lot, Larry, for coming on. And we'll see you again next week if the Lord is willing, and we certainly hope that He is. So, good night, everyone. Get prepared if you're not. Trouble is coming in one way or another. Good night.